So before I interview Craig, I'd just introduce Craig, I'd like to say a prayer over all of us. So we're going to start with prayer, and we're going to end it with prayer. So let's all quiet ourselves. Feel your body sitting in that chair, your feet on the floor, grounded, present. Be aware of that air surrounding you, inspiring you, breathing in, breathing out. Lord God Almighty and everlasting Father, you have brought us in safety to this new day. Preserve us now by your mighty power, that we may not fall into sin nor be overcome by adversity. And in all that we do, direct us to the fulfillment of your purposes. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. So, my new friend, Craig. I know, but Craig and I, it's what I like to use the phrase, are becoming friends. And I keep learning more and more about Craig, and I'm very excited about him being able to share with us today. Craig would really like us to know he is of this place. We were using the term, the ecology, the ecosystem of this specific part of the East Bay is Craig Wong. He grew up here, Albany, high school with Jim Walker as superintendent. He, as a younger person, playing pinball up on Durant. So this is Craig Wong. And he also is such an amazing person of God. So we're just looking forward to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Huge privilege to be here at the Men's Connect breakfast. I understand that this has been going on for a few years, and you've just been traveling together for a long time, and I'm so appreciating that as I'm getting to know First Pres Berkeley a little bit closer, and you know that really this was in a lot of ways the birthplace of New College Berkeley, and so Brother Gill and Reverend Palmer coming together, having vision for this academic institution that would serve the church. It really started here, and the first office was here, right, David? Yeah. Yep.
In this building?
In this building. Yes.
That wing over there. No, it was in this building.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really neat. And so it's really been just a deep privilege to be a part of this ongoing history. And as you know, New College Berkeley and First Pres has partnered, a lot over the years. As you know, the Faith in Film has been a collaboration historically. The Berkeley Palmer Lecture, and then just many members of your congregation serving in a lot of different capacities. Most recently with Michael Barham teaching a number of our classes. Chris Corwin. We're going to be having Mark Stryker, by the way, in a couple of weeks, which is very fun. Then, of course, Susan Phillips, and just how much her work continues to be critical to the ongoing mission of New College Berkeley. So we're going to have a chance to share a little bit more about where NCB is at, what we're working on these days. So I'll be sharing with you about that a little bit later.
Craig, your video isn't going up. I think you can send your video up.
Oh.
There we go. Do you use different lens?
I'm not going to use it just yet.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm just going to show a few slides later on. What is that? Okay. But not yet. So one thing that wasn't mentioned was that I also became a Christian in Berkeley. And it very much, so I was 18 years old, and I was still actually, let me backtrack a little bit. So I'm a 17-year-old kid at Albany High School, and I'm really beginning to I'm really beginning to ask the questions of ultimate purpose, like, what's all this for anyway? And I think I had gotten accepted at Berkeley, and my parents were thrilled about that. They really were hoping that I would join the University of California marching band, but I didn't. But I think I just had all these questions, right? And I was really on this soul search, like, why? What's the purpose of life anyway? And I very much recall just diving in. There's two books in particular that I thought maybe can give me the answer. So one of them was a New York Times bestseller called Looking Out for Number One. And so I picked up that book and I read it from cover to cover, and it was just completely devoid of any hope. Like it's like, nah, this ain't answering it. And then I picked up a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And I read that from cover to cover, and I left just as depressed as before. And so it was actually a little. There's almost always a girl involved, right? And so, I started dating this girl. She's Christian. She was from a very, really conservative fundamentalist church, fire and brimstone, a real turnoff. But there was a seed planted, I think. I think the Lord used that. So when she broke up with me, I think I plummeted again. I think she provided a bit of a Band-Aid on my aching soul. And so when she left me, it sent me back down this back into this tizzy, right? And so a friend of mine had always been wanting to invite me to his church right there on Sacramento and near University. Like, what is that? Berkeley Way, is it? Yeah, and so it's called Berkeley Chinese Baptist, and I went to this youth group meeting. The songs met me. A fellow took me under his wing, brought me to the baptistry room, and shared with me about Jesus. And it was one of those things where, I feel like it's kind of inexplicable, right? But it was at that moment I said, this is my purpose. Like, I have found my purpose for living, and it's Jesus. The next morning, I was hoping my dad changed the oil. You could actually change your oil, go out of the car back then, And so I'm underneath the car, and the oil is spilling out into the pan. And I remember just thinking to myself, what in the world did I do last night? What was that, right? But the thing that I just can't even explain to this day is that there was this deep and profound sense that the decision I had made to follow Jesus the night before was irreversible, irrevocable. There was no turning back. And I look back because, it is one of these things where I know that many folks in their journeys, they will, they'll leave the faith, or they'll go through a spiritual crisis and stuff. And I didn't have that experience. Like that feeling while I was changing the oil that this is it, Jesus is it, has just remained with me from that leap year day of February 29th, 1980 until this day. And I just share that as a praise to God. It's nothing that I can get any credit for. So I wanted to share that story because it sort of establishes the foundation of my story, and I know that you want to hear a little bit about that, about me. So one of the things I thought, it's funny because as I was thinking about what to share today, and I was texting Michael Berriman, and he actually took the time to read my my doctoral dissertation. It's called Unraveling Empire, Reflections on Nationalism, Deceit, and the Hope of Gospel Friendship. And as I was trying to think about what to share, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to read a couple chapters out of this thing. Because I think it sort of says it probably in the most, and probably, for your sake, the most concise way that I can. So I'm going to share a couple of sections of this, in my dissertation, by the way. It was, I went through a Doctor of Ministry program called the Sacred Art of Writing. And it was like the pilot DMin program of the Eugene Peterson Center for the Christian Imagination at Western Theological Seminary in Holland, Michigan. So that's where I went to school. And this was just a few years ago. So what I wrote for my project was just some memoirs about my own journey, especially my journey of sort of the wedding between Christian faith and sociopolitics, and just like how those two came together for me. So I'm going to read a couple of things here. So here's what I'm going to do this morning. I'm going to read a couple of these sections. Then I'm going to share with you a little bit about how that translates into my current ministry with New College Berkeley. Give you a few updates. And then I really want to just interact with you. All right. So I hope that's the most, I hope we mainly do that interaction. I want to hear your questions, any things that you want, that you're curious about me or the ministry or whatever. All right. Okay. So let me just read this section, these couple sections. I was spiritually baptized into the Christian faith the night before the RDJTF commenced operations on March 1st, 1980. RDJTF stands for Rapid Deployment Joint Task Force, a DoD initiative that then President Jimmy Carter signed into law 3 years earlier. In a State of the Union address, Carter announced in no uncertain terms that any attempt by any outside force to gain control of the Persian Gulf region will be regarded as an attack on the vital interests of the United States. And such an assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. Now, not that I had much appreciation for that back then. All I knew was that I had made an irrevocable commitment to Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior that particular night, leap year day, February 29th, in the baptistry of a small Chinese church in Berkeley. I had found the purpose I had been searching for, to live as a redeemed sinner in service to a good and trustworthy God. In my teenage angst and on the heels of a breakup, I discovered that while I was hard-pressed on every side, I was not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed, always carrying in my body the death of Jesus so that the life of Jesus may be revealed in me. These were the Corinthian scriptures that sealed the deal for me, an ironclad, unshakable security that I desperately needed in my young and insecure life. The seemingly unshakable sense of security, however, was put to the test in an unexpected way on April 25th, less than 2 months after that come to Jesus moment, when the president came on television with sobering and catastrophic news. In an attempt to rescue some 50 American hostages in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, a special ops team had been dispatched. Carter went on to report that equipment failure in a rescue helicopter made it necessary to end the mission. As our team was withdrawing, 2 of our American aircraft collided on the ground following a refueling operation in a remote desert in Iran, and regretfully, crewmen died in the crash. The downed helicopters were Navy RH-53Ds nicknamed Bluebeards. I don't precisely recall the thoughts that passed through my brain during that broadcast, but the feelings remain. A heart-sinking realization that our nation was vulnerable in a turbulent world. It was one thing to trust God for meaning, purpose, or even a girlfriend. It was another thing to entirely trust God in the face of political instability and violence, whether at home or abroad. Over the years, I have puzzled over why that announcement from the Oval Office had such profound impact on me, but in recent years, it has begun to make more sense. You see, I'm technically a baby boomer. I am a member of the boomer subset known as Generation Jones, those born between 1954 and 65, Too young to experience the Vietnam War, but old enough to come of age during Watergate and the Iran-Contra affair. I was in diapers during the failed Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was a terrible 2 when JFK was assassinated and a toddler when the U.S. began sending troops to Vietnam. 1964, however, was also the year that Hasbro brought G.I. Joe into the world, and I was one of the first to have one. The original action figure enjoyed fabulous success due to the optimism Americans still had about American power. To my delight, my Korean War veteran father equipped me with all kinds of military fare, a fighting Yank, hundreds of little green army men, along with tanks, jeeps, and rocket launchers. My father and I also watched countless war movies together: The Great Escape, The Dirty Dozen, The Longest Day, Sand Pebbles, The Green Berets, Tora, Tora, Tora. Yeah. Of course, the Americans always won, and this narrative of a military supremacy seeped into my bones. So while I pooped and slept and played during the Vietnam War, that aborted rescue attempt on April 24th, 1980 was my wake-up call to a dangerous and uncertain world, and the unnerving realization that maybe the U.S. wasn't invincible after all. Around that time, my dad was sent off on business as an interior designer for the Bechtel Corporation, one of the largest engineering companies in the world. He spent at least 6 months doing space planning and procurement work for the Saudi royal family in one of Bechtel's largest projects to date, the Jubail project, a huge industrial oil city that was literally built from the ground up. An oil collaboration between the U.S. and the Saudis made sense because a few years before, Carter had come into our living rooms to ask the American people to turn on their heaters and wear cardigan sweaters. I have vivid memories of this because my father took it very seriously and we all froze our asses off that winter. We as a nation needed oil and we needed it badly. It was a need of which the U.S. government was fully aware by the end of World War II. The U.S.-Saudi relationship had been extraordinarily complex since the 50s, but by the late 70s, tensions had thawed and the two expanded both economic and military cooperation. We needed their oil, they needed our protection. It was a symbiotic relationship that wasn't taken too kindly by Iran and other Arab fundamentalist nation states. Now, I knew nothing about the intricacies of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East back then, nor is it a small feat to understand it today. I'm simply making the observation that something significant happened for me at a spiritual level in the early 80s and that entwined my conversion with and about Christ with my sensitivity to international relations and America's behavior in the world. Possessing a deep sense of security was not simply a matter of personal piety and daily quiet times. It also meant practicing faith among the turbulent realities of a violent world. Holding these two in tension has become the story of my life. I do not claim to do it well. I probably fail to do it most of the time. More often than not, particularly after 9/11, I have poured my energies into grasping the big picture, sometimes at the expense of being more present, fully loving to my wife, kids, and other loved ones. I see a nefarious ideologue behind every tree. I am drawn to conspiracy theories with the best or worst of them. These concerns have kept me on a humbling journey in calling out the empire out there. The Spirit often exposes the empire within. But somehow, in the obsessive ways that I try to connect the dots between my life, my theology, and the complex sociopolitics around me, I sense that I am being faithful to my calling as a follower of Christ. This next piece I'm going to read was a letter that I wrote to my children, which was really, in a lot of ways, the motivation for writing this book. Dear children, the American experiment is unraveling. Along with its storied imperial ambitions, Dear children, the American experiment is unraveling along with its storied imperial ambitions. As you probably pick up from your social media community, people around the world are scratching their heads. What's happening to the United States? Christian nationalists are taking power, mental health crises abound, and mass shootings are becoming terrifyingly normal. This is the world you are growing up in, and to be honest, the anxiety keeps me up at night. I came of age when the so-called American dream was still a thing. the promise that awaited every able-bodied middle-class college graduate: buy a car, land a job, get married, purchase a home, and have 2.5 kids and a dog. My peers were yuppies, or young urban professionals, though I admittedly was a young urban minister, or a yummy. The point is that yuppies, in contrast to today's young adult generation, possessed considerable optimism about what kind of life was possible in America. Only one of you is old enough to remember with any lucidity the events of 9/11, the cataclysmic downing of New York's Twin Towers by a Middle East-based terrorist attack. But its reverberations remain to this day, and with no shortage of subsequent traumatic events that have had indelible impact on your young lives. The videotaped racially charged police murder of George Floyd, the COVID-19 lockdown, anti-Asian hate, particularly the Atlanta shootings of March of 2021, pandemic polarization, the Me Too movement, the toxic ascendance of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, the January 6th Capitol insurrection, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the Israeli-Palestinian bloodbath. When I consider all the things you've witnessed over the years, I am in awe of your resilience. What I think about most, however, is your faith. I know that for your generation, Christianity in America is not the way it's supposed to be. Christians may faithfully attend church on Sundays, but many have their proverbial heads in the sand the rest of the week. You've seen conservative evangelicals place their faith in lying, narcissistic misogynists. Closer to home, you've seen the best-intentioned congregations traumatized by shame-based authoritarianism or neutered by the subtle tyranny of institutional preservationism. Reasons abound for you to doubt the efficacy of the gospel. And yet, I see faith still alive in you. I am reminded by the Apostle Paul's words to the Philippian congregation that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion in Christ Jesus. Not only by the grace of God have I had anything to do with it. The truth of the matter is that the journey of writing this book these past 3 years has been sobering. In writing about empire, I've had to face the empire within. Trump is not the only one with toxic masculinity issues. Most men, particularly those steeped in generations of the American rugged individualist narrative, my own father included, developed into emotionally stunted or distorted versions of themselves. My need to control, my anger issues, my limited emotional vocabulary have compromised the father you've needed. I hope that you'll find in these pages personal confession intertwined with personal history and public theology. Truth be told, I've been guilty, along with those I challenged, of living by lies, whether from ideology, culture, or the voices within. Reverend Brian Woodson, a local pastor and activist, said of a ministry colleague of mine back in the day, "Reverend Phil Lawson speaks truth to power with a gentle tone and soft voice, but as he does, the ring of a sledgehammer slammed on the anvil of the universe is heard. He teaches that wherever there is injustice, one must find and reveal the lies upon which it is perpetrated." Reverend Lawson's life is a witness that nonviolence has the power to hammer the red-hot iron of injustice until the lies are revealed and destroyed. I share this to say that part of fanning the flames of your faith, my children, is to exhort you to expose the lies of your day, as I have tried to do in mine. You see, in my Christian community development circles, I used to be involved with the CCDA for many years. We like to talk about how it's not enough to pull drowning bodies out of the river. We must go upstream to find out who's pushing them in. Now, one can provide access to food, or in other words, one can provide access to food and shelter for the newly homeless, but what can be done about unscrupulous landlords and the economic systems that force people into the streets? However, I believe we need to go even further upstream to identify and confront the powers, the principalities, the false narratives, and the idolatries that fuel the injustices in our land. This volume traces my journey of muckraking the national milieu as an act of discipleship. I hope it will inspire you to do likewise. I reflect in this book quite a bit on gospel friendship. Jesus invokes friendship to describe the highest form of love, that is, when one lays down his life for a friend. Jesus himself, of course, is the ultimate model, and he calls us likewise to befriend one another. Gospel friendship is both vertical and horizontal. We have been first loved, and this being so, we then love one another. This is what I've come to understand as gospel friendship. Over the years, the Lord has given me many gospel friends who have generously given of their lives for me, far more than I even recognize. When I pause and realize how much I've been given, I'm also aware of how little I've deserved it. I am learning what gospel friendship is more in retrospect than from any kind of innate capacity to love people in this way. I want you to know, children, that as you continue to grow in Christ and in boldness to speak the truth in love to me, as has been true with increasing regularity this past year, you are becoming gospel friends as well. And I hope and pray that gospel friendships will abound for you all as they have for me. The Lord knows you're going to need it. So those are the two sections I wanted to share with you. So what I'm going to do is just walk you a bit in, like, how has this journey shaped the new college that I'm leading right now. So what does it mean to live faithfully to the gospel in this political moment? And so one way to talk about the new college is that we really just want to be purposely lean in to the questions that face us. Because we really are, as you know, the church is in major deconstruction and influx. Our republic is crumbling. We're on the brink of some pretty disastrous, increasing conflicts around the world. In a lot of ways, there's nothing new under the sun. But my conviction has been that now we need to really come together and talk and have conversation. So, for example, what can we learn about speaking truth to empire from Christ's final days of ministry in Jerusalem? What are the theological frameworks that have energized the rise of religious nationalism and authoritarianism in the U.S.? We had Brad Onishi speak in New College events the last couple years. It's been really, I know you guys are, many of you are reading his book. It's wonderful. What do we need to learn from the confessing church in 1930s Germany? So this is a retreat we had in Benicia. What is the meaning of Advent for the African American church in the U.S. context? So this, again, just the importance of leaning into minority voices. How does the Bible bear testimony to and impart vision for a multi-ethnic, pluralistic society? This was Robert Shaw Romero, and really leaning into Brown theology as a way to help us. How might Asian American ancestral stories help the church understand the rise of religious nationalism in the present context? How can our immigration stories foster ecclesial solidarity and faithful response amidst the current crisis? This was a retreat that we had between Asian leaders and Latino leaders, and it was a beautiful time together, and a lot of fruit came out of that. How can the war experience of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien help us discern faithful response in today's world? A number of you were part of that last year. It was a lovely event that we had here on your campus. How can we learn about the church's prophetic tasks from MLK's final sermons? How can journaling help us remain centered in politically anxious times? How can songwriting and musical performance provoke the church to endure and speak truth to power? And finally, what does it mean to be peacemakers, and how is that central to the church's public witness, and how does that need to be lived out today? So I wanted to just share with you just a few slides to kind of help you get a picture of the kinds of things that we're purposely trying to do in these days. So I'm just going to fly over just some of the recent developments for New College. So in this last couple of years, we have been busy incorporating, basically bringing Radix magazine into New College, and so now Radix magazine is the official publication of New College Berkeley, and that has just been a thrilling development, to be honest. Like it's it is, so now we have a publication. We don't have to create our own. And it just made a lot of sense as our leaders and their leaders came together and discussed this possibility of merging, and it has happened. So I talk about it in terms of Radix Magazine and a Center for Writing because we really do want New College Berkeley to be a significant center for writing. Marilyn McIntyre, of course, is a gem. The pictures on the right side, as you see, are actually a Marilyn McIntyre-led New College Berkeley Gen Z writing retreat. And so we gathered a group of Gen Zers together, and she just introduced them to the power of writing, and did her magic with them, and it was a delightful experience. So also we are developing a cohort program. Now, I want to say too that it's not like we've never had cohort programs, and Susan Phillips and the Spiritual Direction, really those are spiritual formation cohorts. These are co-learning cohorts. The theme for this one this year is basically this group of people coming together for 9 months to really discern what gospel faithfulness means in this political moment. So this is where we're just going to be reading articles together and discussing. This coming Monday, we're going to be in conversation with a fellow named Michael Ware, who's the founder and director of the Center for Christianity and Public Life. We're all reading his book, and I don't know why I include this picture of Tim and Carol on their motorcycle, but I just thought it was fun. So anyway, this is the cohort, and then the Latino fellow on the left side there is actually in the cohort. He's also doing our certificate program, which this is a pilot program as well. It's just starting, but it's a little more academic. He has a project advisor. He's going to write a paper, all that. So we want to begin to develop a certificate program, which in some ways puts the college back in the new college. So it's more of an academic track. Spiritual direction and contemplative practices, like I said, we continue to have Susan Phillips and her amazing team of spiritual directors, and we just want to continue to build on that. We want to diversify. We want to really work intentionally on ethnic diversification so that we're serving a broader constituency, and also we're incorporating. We're inspired by and incorporating a lot of Susan's contemplative practices into these various spaces. So up on the left side, that's Karen Seth. She's one of the new spiritual directors on the NCB team, and she led the cohort in contemplative practices. We went through a lament contemplative exercise together. On the lower left there was a spiritual formation. It was basically called Staying Spiritually Centered in the Political Storm, and we had that in Fremont, and so a couple of spiritual directors led a workshop on that. And then on the right side, so that's Tammy Long, and she's a spiritual director, and she is also on our advisory, but she helped root our Martin Luther King retreat in spiritual and contemplative practices. And so anyway, that's to say that we're continuing to build on and grow the work of spiritual direction and contemplative practices throughout all that we do. So I wanted to just invite you all to get a taste for group spiritual direction. You may have heard about this already. I'm not sure, but we're actually doing this in partnership with you all at First Press. Something that Steve and I have been working on together. But it's starting in January and it goes through May. It's sort of like a mini session, so it's not like a full year, but but it is a way to get a really good taste of what we do with group spiritual direction. And this QR code will get you right to the information page and registration page for this. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, I really want to encourage you all. This is open to you, and also to, if you have friends and colleagues outside of First Pres, you're welcome to invite them to be a part of this. So, and lastly, sorry, this is. Oh, by the way, you're gonna. I don't know. Should I?
Do you want to pass these out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
Here's some regular brochures before we start.
there's QR codes on those on these things too, which will enable you to get on our mailing list. I was just going to put this up here too, but to stay informed. And if you're not on our mailing list, I know a lot of you are, but if you aren't yet, you can use this QR code to just stay informed as to upcoming events and what's going on and things that are developing and so forth. So that's all I'm going to do presentation-wise. I just want to invite you now to ask any questions and anything that I shared pique your curiosity. Let's just have a little bit of conversation. Yes. Oh.
Well, is cohort the new buzzword? I'm hearing this from folks where I used to work. And what does that mean exactly? Because I'm hearing it more and more. Is it something that's the latest and the greatest? I don't know.
Yeah, it's really not latest and greatest. Cohorts have been around forever and ever. I mean, it really. I would say that cohorts primarily come out of the academic sphere. And so, yeah. So if you think, I think one trend that you might be seeing is that, like let me just talk about seminaries, for instance, right? So I think historically seminaries would offer like an MDiv or a master's degree of some kind, where it's really just an individual signing up for an MDiv program and going through that program on their own, right? What seminaries are doing a lot more of these days is to actually have like MDiv or MA folks do it in as part of a group. Does that make sense? So making basically cohorts are a way of making learning much more communal, and that's what we're wanting to do at New College Berkeley. Is that, and let me just share with you too that I think when I took on this job 3.5 years ago, I said this then, and I say this now, maybe even more emphatically, that I don't want New College Berkeley to just be, an events organization. Like, I don't want to just put on events that people can go to, and I'm hustling and bustling, trying to get people in the door. That's really unattractive to me. It doesn't mean that, and so what I really want to see is I want to see community and relationships grow and develop. And so the cohort approach is a way for New College to foster that kind of long-term relationship. So rather than just hoping individuals come to an event, we want to be able to gather a group of people to just journey together over a longer period of time. Does that make sense? So that's what a cohort is. It's just a group. It's a fancy word for group.
Well,
Yes?
Craig, what I would say is it's a group that's committed to sticking together through it.
That's right.
So I taught in the MBA program at St. Mary's for quite a while, and it was almost all cohort-based. So
Yes.
I also taught in the classic program where people randomly chose classes in their own individual track to fulfill it, but the cohorts started out together and ended together 2 years later. So when I would walk in and teach the ethics segment in the middle of an MBA program, all the students knew each other, And so I was the rookie who knew nobody in the class and mispronounced names, and they all laughed because every professor did that. So it's a terrific thing because it's not just group education, it's committed group.
Yes.
And so I just love the fact that you're focusing on that.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's right, David. You said it better than me, but it really is about growing relationship over a longer period of time. So it's not just that it's group, but that it's, like you said, it's a committed group over a longer period of time. My hope is that, I think I mentioned earlier in the chapters that I read, I'm hoping that gospel friendship emerges from these cohorts, like folks really, that lasting connections and generative partnership can come out of these cohorts. So, yes.
That was a very great letter you wrote to your children about, the fact that you took the time to do that and you're so honest about it. I really commend that. But I guess that obviously it seems to me occurred before the latest, I would call Trump 2.0 took place, which just really ramped up everything. So I guess my question is, how do we, knowing that there really is no checks and balances on what's taking place in this country, and sometimes it's so easy to feel helpless to do anything. I mean, obviously you talk about faith, but I mean, what is it that people who are really struggling with that can go away with? Because we can't go on the way we're going on right now. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really, I knew that it was not a good thing for this man to get another term. I think I was pretty naive. I didn't realize I had no idea it was going to get this bad, and one by one, all the, like you said, the checks and balances, all the places where there could be brakes put on, is proving to be, inadequate, right? So yeah, no, I mean, I think we're all in new terrain, right? And I think that when I talk about a cohort that is committed to the question of how do we remain faithful to the gospel in this political moment, I'm asking that question right along with them. It's not like I have the answers. The thing I think one immediate thing I would say though is that there's like if this is not the way we want to go as a nation, like if this is not the way to go, and we preferred a liberal pluralistic democracy, right? If that's what our preference was, if that's what our preference is, I guess my question is, how well did we even do that anyway? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways in which people are now starting to realize, so, this is, it's kind of like now that we're losing our democracy, we're beginning to realize, there was some good things about it, right? I feel like as the Church of Jesus Christ, because the reality is, and this I feel like is what in a lot of ways motivated me to do this work, is that I see churches and congregations pretty fragmented, certainly polarized, disintegrated themselves. I mean, it's kind of like how if you think about like one of the things that we have not done well as a church in America is to learn from each other, right? So we're all busy just we've nailed it, and I come from a church of 30 years over in San Francisco, where I am guilty of thinking that we have nailed our ecclesiology. We know what it means to be the church. We know what it means to be faithful. We know what the gospel is, and we know what it means to be faithful to the gospel. And it was really easy for me and my my fellow brothers and sisters in my church in in San Francisco, to look down our noses on everyone else. This is the way of the American church, and it has killed us, is killing us, right? So I think a big part of, in answer to your question, this is a much longer term thing, but we actually have to lean into and embody the kind of interdependent, pluralistic, multi-ethnic society that we think is ideal, right? Like, we as a church, of all people, need to start living this out. And that's what I feel like I'm trying to do with New College. Like how can we practice something new that really joins us together and really helps us to be one in Christ. Not that we agree on everything, but there is a way in which we are offering something counter, to what we're seeing, right? To this totalitarian state that we're becoming. So anyway, so I think a lot of it is just, let's work on what we want for the nation. It is pretty hard to run up against a fully militarized ICE force. How do you do that, right? But we do need courage. We do need voice. We do need to push back. We do need to show up on, things like No Kings rallies, because we do need to be part of the larger body politic in saying, this is not the way things are supposed to be. Yes?
I have a hard question.
Yeah.
The church,
As if that other one wasn't, but
anyway, the church is now reading in class a book by Amidst called
Preparing for War. Yeah.
And I've read ahead. And what he concludes is this: the time has passed for dialogue and understanding, that it's now headed towards civil war. Do you have comment to that? I'm hoping for some other comments in the conclusion of that book.
Yeah. Yeah, my housemates and I, my wife and housemates, we actually watched the A24 film on Civil War the other day, just because. So I know Brad, and after the election, it was pretty hard for him, and as you can imagine, right? And so, I do think that he is right in the sense that kumbaya dialogues between left and right and all that is not is not very relevant right now. It doesn't mean that we don't work on those things, because we are to be peacemakers, and we are to, if there is this hideous divide, in which there is, we do need to be bridge builders as people of faith. But I do think he's right in the sense that, the ship has sailed, and we, I'm not sure how this thing gets turned around. But I think that is where I think I'm just going back to what I said earlier, that that is where we need to do the long, hard work of leaning into our calling as a community of shalom, and to, and that's why, like for me, there is this message, right, that Brad talks about, where the desire to keep foreigners out and immigrants out and keep America white, as the white Protestant order that it's always that it always has been. I'm actually fifth generation Californian. My Chinese ancestors have been in this country a lot longer than a lot of European folks. But anyway, it's like we do have to counter that message, right? We have to offer a different message, and we are fully equipped to do that theologically and biblically, and that's why I had that slide about, what is the gospel vision for a multi-ethnic pluralistic society? Well, it's all there, and so in some ways we have to do evangelism all over again, but in a very different way, right? We have to embody and proclaim the good news of diversity, So anyway, no easy answers to your question, but yes. I'm sorry.
I don't know which one.
Go ahead.
My question is, if you were to speak to a minister of a church that follows Trump, or maybe a group of pastors alike, how would you outline your approach to that? How would you begin to show a better way?
Boy, I love that. I love that question. And when I think about our cohort this year, I hope that some folks take on that question. Because I really do think that it has to appeal to whoever we think whatever it is that we share in common about who Jesus is. Like it needs to start there, right? I think one of the things that has been very, I don't know, I feel like this was not a new thought, but I feel like it's a deeper thought for me now. That a huge reason why we're in the mess that we're in is it's a crisis of theology. Like we've really butchered the scriptures in our 200 plus year history as a nation. And you think about what's happening in Gaza, you think about the dispensational theology that undergirds, Christian Zionism. So this was some Englishman, who tried to offer his framework of dispensation, his biblical framework for dispensationalism in his own country, and it didn't take. But then he brings it to the United States, and it just is eaten up, and it sweeps the land. I mean, I love my Berkeley Chinese Baptist Church, but I grew up on dispensationalism, and in the Chinese Conservative Church, you either went to Dallas Theological Seminary, or Multnomah. Or Talbot, like there were just a very small number of places that you'd go to get educated theologically, and they all just completely are behind dispensational theology, right? So anyway, I just think that I think that's part of what I think that we have to appeal to the fact that, hey, we believe in Jesus together, we believe in the Bible together. This is my interpretation, and we do it with all graciousness too, right? Like, I think, but anyway, I think your question is great, but I do think that we have to approach it biblically, theologically, and with real generosity of heart, Yes.
First part is, what do you mean by dispensational theology?
Oh.
And also, the church is obviously in apostasy.
Oh.
In apostasy. And you said, how do we turn this around? What do you mean by that? Turn what around? Because God is sovereign, is he not? Is not Jesus sovereign? And if you look at the book of Revelation and Daniel and whatever, this is all predictable. Prophesied.
Right.
What we're going through right now.
No, that's good. Good point. So dispensational theology definitely don't want to get into that now. I encourage you to look it up.
Okay.
But all I would say is that dispensational theology was a dominant theology in the United States, especially among Protestants. And you can look at dispensational theology as a way to understand why so many Christians are just unswervedly behind Israel. Because, in a nutshell, Israel must establish its full presence and occupation of that land, and the temple, purely a Jewish temple, and that is when Jesus will come back. So, in other words, we have to get behind the U.S. military in order to make sure that Jesus comes back. Okay, so that, that's just a really rough way of talking about it, but that's sort of the logical extension of dispensational theology, which again, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think, 1920s, 1820s. This fellow by the name of Darby brought it to the United States, and it's like I said, it spread like wildfire, and it's to this day, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we still believe that stuff. But yes.
Craig, it was encouraging to see the number of young people in the photos of the events at New College. What's the key to bringing young people into the work of the church? You look around this room, there are a lot of gray-haired men here.
Are soon to be.
Yeah, so yeah, so I gave a sermon recently in Los Altos, and they kind of were asking that question, and so what I shared with them was that because I think they were asking the question, how do we mentor the next generation? And so a few years ago, this was actually before New College Berkeley. I think I want to do this again with New College Berkeley. But before New College Berkeley, I had another little ministry. We were doing stuff similar. But one of the things I did was some focus groups on boomers and millennials. And that was a few years ago, so millennials were a little bit younger. Millennials are getting old. But that was my question was, to the millennials, like, what do you need in a mentor? First of all, do you want mentors? Because one of the dominant thoughts that boomers have is that they're pretty convinced that the young generation doesn't want them. And in doing these focus groups with the young people, they're like, oh yes, we do. We do want them.
Can I quote you on that?
What's that?
Can I quote you on that?
Sure. Yeah. So they want them, but I said, okay. So, but what do you need then from a mentor? They said two things in particular that really stood out for me, and so one was that I would. You older people you've been through your own major, and this goes back to the sociopolitics. Like you've gone through all kinds of challenges in your day. The Vietnam War, the sexual revolution, Watergate. I mean, it's like, how did you navigate that as a Christian? So they want to hear stories, right? They want to hear stories of how did you try to be, follow Christ in the midst of all those things. So that was interesting to me. And then, but the other one was, and I don't know how you're going to take this, but the younger generation is like, you older people, we really need you to be a little bit more self-aware. Your generation has, been steeped in certainty, Like, this is, I have the knowledge that you need. The younger generation, isn't buying that, right? What really draws them to you is if you are actually owning your own stuff. And I think that's, and I'm still trying to own my own stuff, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that I've arrived in any way. But I think, to the degree to which we can identify, we can own up to the fact that we have been shaped. And that's, I want to say too that, this is not just about Craig Wong, having an interest in political science, and I know many of you do. But I'm interested at it, from a discipleship level, which is, how have I been shaped by the prevailing narratives of empire and, militarism, racism, and greed? Like, how have I been shaped by that? And none of us can sit here, and say that you were not shaped by any of those things, right? We've all been shaped profoundly, right? So the young people need to see that we're actually working on it. That we know that we have been as much a part of the problem as anything, and that we're working on it as a Christ follower. Like, I want the Spirit to reveal to me, the stuff in me that is not of Him. And so that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that that one of the key things to getting young people in the room is that they see that we're learning too. Like, we're with them. We are trying to figure things out. But at the same time, they also know that we've been around longer and we've been around the block more. And there are things that they know they can learn from us just because of all the history and the big picture that we have that they don't. So anyway, I think it was interesting that going back to that Gen Z writing workshop, I think because the way Marilyn McIntyre led that thing, and very much she led with a lot of curiosity, it wasn't just about dispensing information about writing, but that she really set the table for a conversation and for their questions. And so one of the Gen Zers after he wasn't that familiar with New College, but he went to that Gen Z writing retreat, and he says, if this is what New College is about, then I'm in. So it really is about the posture. It is about how we, are creating these spaces. Is it just top-down lecture, like, I have information that you need, or is it actually genuinely a conversation? And is there actual co-learning and a desire to really learn from one another? And that is just really key. So if we can create those kinds of spaces, then I think you could really make some progress. Is that helpful? I don't know. Yes.
I would say that maybe the problem is I think that the young people you're talking to are self-selecting groups that are already spiritual, thoughtful, reflective. When you look at young people in general, I think, at least some of my experiences is this baby boomer generation has nothing to say to us. You're in the earth, politics,
Mm-hmm.
You're weaponizing Christianity in a way.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real challenge to engage them.
It really is,
I'm not sure how to go forward.
Yeah, no, I think part of it is just to recognize and to acknowledge and to embrace the fact that as a society, we have been a train wreck, and so whether or not a young person is curious about spiritual things, about truth, is definitely not on neutral ground, right? Like there has been, the young people are really coming out of a huge deficit, especially if they've been in a society where they've had the the American dream dangled in front of them. And now it's like, how can I even think about owning a home, or I can't even get a job, or my job's being taken away by AI. And I mean, it's just like the list is endless, right? And so is there a reason for their cynicism and their despair and their lack of trust in institutions and the church? Absolutely, right? So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of relational work to do with young people. And again, I think that, if we can sort of own with them that, we're all pretty messed up here, and we all need help. But anyway, I mainly want to agree with you. It's really, yes.
Before we move on, I don't want to leave it at young people as being a problem, because what I see from the I work with a lot of young teachers, and I can tell you young teachers are so much better because they've grown up in a multicultural, pluralistic society where they have some empathy towards students that don't look like them, or perhaps look like them. I have a lot of hope. And I don't want to go with that.
Yeah, amen.
I have a tremendous amount of hope, because in 47 years of being in public education, I've seen a tremendous change in terms of the ability of these young teachers coming in and having empathy for students, building those relational capacity with students, and really making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go away with the fact that.
Oh yeah, and I certainly did not want to paint a picture of bleakness. Yeah.
As a group.
Yeah.
I want us to.
Right.
There is hope out there.
Yep. No, amen to that. I'm
Right.
probably at the end of my time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg.